Making pollen slides from wind-pollinated trees such as yew, alder and hazel. I collected some samples out of the field a couple of days ago and put them into little tubes. Now fill them up with isopropanol, replace the caps and then give them a good shake to wash off the pollen. Take out as much of the plant material as you can, using forceps. There's always a little bit left over inside, but we'll deal with that in a moment. Get some fresh tubes. Shake a pollen sample and then let it settle for a moment before pouring what hasn't sunk into the next tube. And as you can see with the alder, you get rid of most of the junk left behind in the other tube, and you've got these nice tubes. Now allow them to stand for at least an hour, or even better overnight, for the pollen to settle. And here, for example, is the yew pollen, nice pellet, very good one with the alder, and I'd also prepared some hazel. There you go. Take off most of the isopropanol. Just use any old pipette this time, it's not important. And then fill up with some deionized water, just to dilute the alcohol off again. And again allow them to settle for at least an hour or overnight, so you get some nice pellets again with a clear supernatant. And yes, guess what? You need to take the supernatant off as much as you can. Leave about a mil or so at the bottom of the tube. Now this time you need a separate pipette for each tube, and use that to suspend the pollen and transfer it into a smaller tube, and then leave that to settle. In one of these small tubes it only takes about 20 minutes. Again, remove most of the supernatant. And this time you want to add deionized water proportional to the size of the pellet that you've got, and I'm just making a guesstimate here. And then resuspend them nicely with the specific pipette for each tube. So a new pipette for each tube. Now take 0.1 ml of each sample and spread it onto a slide that's on a hot plate. And then allow the slide to dry. Now I could see that the yew was perhaps a bit too thick, so I've just diluted the sample and put a diluted aliquot onto the slide and let them dry. Now comes the time to add the glycerin jelly. This is red glycerin jelly from Brunel Microscopes Limited. Whoops, I had one drop to the side rather than the middle, but I don't think it's going to matter. Take a cover slip and very gently place one end on one side of the drops. Lower them down until you just get contact and then let go. And that reduces the number of bubbles that you're likely to get under the slide. Now you can actually move the cover slip around a bit if you need to. There you go. A bit more square. Now we'll do it again with the yew pollen, so you just get an idea of what it's like. One drop, one shake, and another bit more. You soon get a feel for how much you need. And again, take a cover slip, rest on one side, lower gently, drop down. There you go. Continue with the other slides, and you then just wait on a hot plate until the pollen glycerin jelly has actually spread underneath. And if you leave it for over about 15 minutes, you find that the slide darkens where the pollen is actually binding this stain. Now, as a thought, the first yew slide had got too much pollen in it. Now, the second yew slide looks much better. The dilution's obviously worked. And here you can see it at a high magnification, 400 times, 40 times objective, as I focus up and down. And what I usually do is to create a focus stack from the equator through to the top of the pollen grain. Now, if I used crossed polars and a wave plate, I could also see these ghosts. Now, this is the alder pollen using a 10 times objective, and here with a 40 times objective, again focusing up and down. And as usual, I'll take a focus stack so I can see more detail all through the slide. Now it's the turn of the hazel pollen using the 10 times objective. And then notice when I used cross polars, you get starch grains glowing in the background in this sample. Looking at the 40 times objective, and again using cross polars, you can see the details of the pollen grains and the starch grains glowing. Here's the focus stack. And here's the focus stack with cross polars and a wave plate, so I can see the pollen grains and the starch grains. Making pollen slides from wind-pollinated trees such as yew, alder and hazel.